I got a call from my daughter's elementary school that she had fallen, and I was in the OR doing anesthesia, and I was like, I have to go. Someone else came in, took over my case, and on the way there, I received a call from my manager, and she said, "What time do you plan on coming back today?" And I said, "What exactly do you mean by that?" And she's like, "Well, you're scheduled for a 12-hour shift. I know you have to leave to pick up your daughter, but like, when are you coming back?" And I said, "I'm not."
I resonate so much with that story. You were just stuck trading your time for money, and when you're trying to spend more time with your family, it's impossible.
A lot of us have been groomed to think you earn more and more income in order to support the life that you want, but really the tax code benefits people who provide housing and who start businesses. There literally right now is $2.1 trillion sitting in old 401ks that people don't know that they can utilize for investing in real estate.
Why do you think that so many of healthcare workers struggle to build lasting wealth even though they're making such good income? What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of The Lowdown. My guest today comes from a high-stakes career as a certified registered nurse anesthetist and has become a general partner in multifamily real estate. Leah Krebs spent years at the bedside, putting patients to sleep and keeping them safe. Now she helps others build a better financial future, and her and her husband have started Priority One Capital, a firm built specifically to help other healthcare professionals earn passive income through apartment investing. So Leah, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you for having me, Lorenzo. I'm excited for our chat today. I'm excited to share.
Yeah, me too. I love connecting with other people who are involved in real estate, especially those involved in healthcare. I mean, I'm a nurse, and so this really hits home for me, so I'm excited. So many listeners may have not heard of what a CRNA is. So can you talk about what it is that you actually do on a day-to-day basis and how long it actually took to get to this point?
Yes. So I will first start out by telling you that, I was a bedside nurse for 16 years. And one of the things that I always wanted to do was to go back to school for nurse anesthesia. But I married young, I had my kids young, life kind of swept me away for a bit of time. And then finally, 16 years into my career, I decided, after working at, University of Maryland Shock Trauma Center, which is the busiest trauma center in the nation, decided to go back to anesthesia school. And it was something that I always dreamt about. It was something that I wrote about in my essay for undergraduate school to get into undergrad. It was, looking into the future as far as a career path I wanted to go. So the day-to-day, so anesthesia, let's talk about anesthesia, Certified Registered Nurse Anesthetist. We take care of you from the time that we meet you, and we do all of your anesthesia. So our job is to not only manage patients one-on-one, but we are the people that are managing your physiology. We are managing everything from, the surgery aspect, aligning ourselves with surgeons in the operating room so that we together can provide the best anesthetic. We are independent practitioners, and we have been doing anesthesia collectively as a whole in a group since the Civil War. So we actually, we've been around for a minute, and it surprises me still to this day how many people don't realize that nurse anesthetists provide primarily all of the anesthesia that you receive in hospital and in the outpatient setting.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So on a day-to-day for me, what that looks like, I did trauma anesthesia, so I graduated in 2012. I went back to the trauma center, did trauma anesthesia for about 6.5 years. You see things that most people never see in a lifetime, and that's where I spent a lot of my career prior to going to anesthesia school. And so, when you're constantly doing trauma critical care, then you go to anesthesia school. It was extremely difficult to get in. It's very, very competitive. A little secret about me, I was actually waitlisted the very first time. And about 2 weeks after I found out I was waitlisted, I got in. So, yeah. And so I always tell people, like, never give up, never give up. At the time I had, my kids at that time they were 6 and 9. And so they were young. They were very young. And there was a lot going on there as far as balancing, motherhood activities and then getting into anesthesia school. And all you do is live, eat, and breathe anesthesia. That's it. You have no time for anything else. The hardest thing I think that I've ever done, to be honest with you. So it's not for the weak at heart. But what I really, really enjoy is that one-on-one interaction that I get with my patients, and now I do 1099 work. So I have my own anesthesia business, and I do 1099 work outside of the hospital.
Wow, quite the journey. It's crazy. I have 3 friends who have gone through anesthesia school, and one happened to get his master's before they kind of like mandated that everyone has to get their doctorate, and the other 2 had to get their doctorate. So it's like you go get your bachelor's degree, and then you're working for as long as you did, and then you go back to school for another 3 years. And in these 3 years, as you were alluding to, you have no time to do anything else other than eat, sleep, and drink anesthesia. And I unfortunately have heard of other people getting divorces because anesthesia school was so strenuous on their relationship and all that stuff. So it's crazy just to think about everything that you do. And then on top of that, everything you do after anesthesia school, keeping patients alive and all the stress that you go through. Is there ever moments where you're thinking to yourself, like, holy shit, like this is too much, or the stress that you have after work, like how do you take that all home and everything like that and decompress?
Yeah. So back to your, well, I'll speak to that, but back to your earlier point about, there's one of the things that they said on the first day of anesthesia school was, okay, so here's the deal. Some of you are going to be divorced by the end of this program. One of you is probably going to have a baby. And some of you are not actually going to make it through the entire program. And like, that's the brutal truth. And guess what? 2 months before anesthesia school ended, my husband of 16 years said he did not want to be married anymore.
Oh, no.
So, yeah. So I had 2 kids, still had to pass my final exams, study for my boards, find a job, keep everything afloat. And at that time, I had realized that things in our world were very unwell. So I had a lot of cleanup that I had to do when I found out, a lot of things. So, school's already hard enough. And then you have like kids' emotions that you need to manage. Then you have to manage your own emotions. And then you have to actually stay focused, not crumble, and just realize, hey, like this is a time where I can show my girls what it means to put your big girl panties on and basically just keep going. And they were my primary focus. Like I was doing this for them. I was doing it for a future, and I wasn't going to quit. And they know their mom's not a quitter. And so today, my girls are 26 and almost 21. And in the midst of all this chaos, I happened to meet somebody, about 1.5 years after everything settled. And he's my best friend and business partner now. And we now have a blended family because now I have a bonus daughter who's right in the middle of my oldest and my youngest. So it's been a whirlwind experience, but those are the defining moments in your life where you can you have 2 choices. You can either, face it head on, or you can let it dictate how the rest of your life goes. And that was definitely a very pivotal moment for me. The second part, I forgot about the second part because I got so involved in that. But
No, it's okay. I was just saying how everything that you do at work is so stressful. So I'm wondering how you're able to come home and just decompress or decompartmentalize from everything. Because I know, nursing in general and healthcare in general is extremely traumatic. The things that we see is unlike anyone else who's not in healthcare sees, especially being the one keeping patients alive. And so I was just wondering how, you're able to do it and come home and just take care of your daughters or take care of yourself.
Yeah. So I think for me, I've always prioritized my health. Fun fact is that prior to getting into real estate and building Priority One Capital, I actually had a health coaching business for about 2 years. And I really wanted to help other women, especially, we're known in the healthcare industry to be the last people to take care of. We take care of everybody else. And then for whatever reason, we all put ourselves last.
Yep.
So that really wasn't working. It's not sustainable. And, I had my own journey with that. I had gained a ton of weight in anesthesia school. I've always been athletic my entire life, but between stress, a divorce pending, raising young kids, finishing school, getting a job. I had gained a bunch of weight. And then you hit your like 40s and you have other hormonal changes that are going on. So it was like I had hit a brick wall and I was like, okay, like I've got to rein this back in. And if I'm going to do this journey, I'm going to speak this journey out loud, and then I'm going to bring some other people along with me. And so I did that for about 2 years. And I think you have to put your health as a top priority. And a lot of people put it as the last thing on their list. So you have to build it into your calendar, into your schedule, and make you a priority, no matter what it is. Like either go to the gym, take a walk, yoga, meditate, whatever it is, that's like number one on the list, and I never sacrifice it. I'm lucky that who I'm married to is actually a retired Maryland State Trooper and paramedic. And here in Maryland, we have a very unique, emergency medical system where we have several helicopters stationed all over the state. Those helicopters are basically paid for, like when you register your vehicle, a portion of that registration fee goes towards supporting the aviation command. And so the paramedics are also state troopers. So, he would fly a lot of patients, to us at the trauma center, and we kind of knew of each other. And his wife, during the time that I was in anesthesia school, passed away from pancreatic cancer. So he was raising a single daughter. He was a single dad for a while, raising a daughter. And then everything that happened to me happened, during that time. And then we just became like reacquainted, and, the rest is history. But that's how we cope, because I'm lucky that we understand each other in ways that, like, if I was married to somebody in finance or some other genre or some other industry, like it would be really hard to relate. But like, conversations at our dinner table were probably a little bit different than most others. And I'm sure you can relate since your wife is in MP school. So, that's how we deal with it. And, going to the gym, working out, we have, a gym downstairs in our basement that we put together, and that actually came together during COVID. We were lucky that we had that downstairs during COVID, because, COVID was not fun.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I agree with all your points there. It's really important to take care of yourself, because how can you take care of others when you aren't taking care of yourself first? It's so crazy to me to think that, I see so many doctors who are giving all this advice and stuff, but yet they're overweight themselves, and like that kind of contradicts everything, right? And then it's also amazing to have a partner who's going through the same things as you, so you guys can decompress at home, for sure. So I want to talk about the actual like golden handcuffs that people often feel. I know I feel it. I work in California, where we make some of the best wages as far as like being a nurse and all that stuff. And so you have a career where you've worked tremendously hard for. I'm sure you're making an amazing salary and all that stuff. So how have you been able to have that shift where you want to do something totally new and uncomfortable after having gone through this extremely long journey, all this extensive training, and then now you want to do something new again? Like, how did you get over that hump of getting over that golden handcuffs?
Yeah. So I think for me, and this is going to sound super, cliche, but I've always had a burning desire inside of me to build something, and I never really knew what it was. And I feel like every stage of my life that I've been through has literally prepared me for like the next room and the next thing that I'm supposed to be in. I will tell you a story that there were two things that happened to me. The one was early on in my anesthesia career, where I got a call from my daughter's elementary school that she had fallen and it looked like she had broken her leg. And I work for a major trauma center, and I was in the OR doing anesthesia, and I was like, I have to go, and I'm a single mom at that point. So I'm like, I have to go. Someone else came in, took over my case. And on the way there, I received a call from my manager, and she said, "What time do you plan on coming back today?" And I said, "What exactly do you mean by that?" And she's like, "Well, you're scheduled for a 12-hour shift. I know you have to leave to pick up your daughter, but like, when are you coming back?" And I said, "I'm not. You know that my daughter is going to need x-rays and be splinted and all these things, but I'm not coming back today." So that was the first thing. And the second thing was when we went through COVID. Doing trauma anesthesia during COVID was the hardest, most grueling, stressful, physically and mentally draining experience that I have ever had. We are in full blown, like, protective gear. For those who are not in healthcare, we were wearing pappers. We looked like something out of, a, you know,
Quarantine movie,
yeah,
literally.
literally. And to try to communicate in when you're wearing that and everyone in the operating room is wearing the same thing, nobody can hear each other. And not to mention the level and acuity of the patients that like you're taking care of. And I just got to a point where I was so mentally and physically exhausted and burnt out. I said, there has to be more. There has to be more. There's got to be something else because I'm going from that. If you've ever read anything by Robert Kiyosaki or Cash Flow Quadrant or any of those books, like I'm over here in the employee section, and I had done some moonlighting over here as 1099, and I knew that when my husband retired, we were covered with health insurance still, when he retired. So I was like, what am I doing? I'm like, I need to go full blown 1099 so that I can have control over my schedule, control over my life. And so I went from like that W-2 employee to now being self-employed. And the shift came after those events happened. And I was like, I need to have ownership and stake in something where, I can build it. My husband and I can build it together. And then there's still a way that like we're serving other people because we're not the kind of people to retire and just do nothing. We've never been those type of people. Retirement, buying into the go to school, get a good job, earn, earn income, earn as high as you can, and work 40 years at the same place and then retire. I just always sort of like kind of bucked against that a little bit. Like I was part of that system, so I'm not like squashing it. But those events really were pivotal for me in making the decision and going full force with real estate and multifamily. And the story of how we got into that and how things kind of drifted into that is pretty amazing as well.
I resonate so much with that story, and I think many others who are involved in real estate do too. And it's like, as you were saying, you are just stuck trading your time for money. And when you're trying to spend more time with your family, it's impossible to because you have to be at the hospital training. And so I see other anesthesiologists and surgeons who are there all hours of the day, all hours of the night, always on call. And I'm like, how do you spend time with your family? And then they have nannies and stuff like that who are raising their kids. And, it's like, that's something I definitely do not want to be at in my life when I have kids. And I'm always trying to help other people do the same thing. And so I really resonate with everything you're saying for that, for sure.
Yeah, and I think during that time too, like I was reading all kinds of books. I was reading books on business. I was reading books about, there was like a whole like personal growth journey that you like go through when, you know, uh, your back gets put up against the wall. And with everything that happened, the 2 months before anesthesia school graduation and, getting a divorce and raising kids, I've always been somebody who's curious and asks questions, and I've always had a lot of grit. I was never given anything in my life. I've worked really hard for everything that I have. And, when you have that level of grit and like burn in your belly, you just find a way to make things happen and you find a way to make things work. And so, I was like, I am really tired of trading like you said, my time for money, and all these other people in the world are running businesses and they're creating opportunity. I do think that I think social media glamorizes entrepreneurship because it's not for everyone and it's not easy at all. And they only see the highlight reels on social media. They don't see the late nights, the early mornings, the putting out of fires, and then also like just getting to that next level, right? Like we have to push through the same walls and the same doors and everything to kind of like move into the person that we're supposed to be. And I think that really sums up kind of like my journey over the last 12 years, is that I've grown and I've progressed, and I am a constant learner, and I'm always asking questions, and I'm curious.
Yeah. So just to summarize, you've been a CRNA for 12 to 14 years or so, and then you had this really traumatic experience going through COVID and the event with your daughter where you left work and then your boss was giving you shit for leaving. What was the things that you actually did? You said you read Robert Kiyosaki's book, right? And then you started surrounding yourself with other people. I mean, our job is very time sensitive, and so you don't have a lot of free time to do this. So were you just alluding to like moonlighting, doing this after work?
Yeah, so there's a little phrase out there that, even though we're shift workers, I was working weekend nights and holidays. And even as a bedside nurse, for most of my 16 years, I did weekend night option. So I could raise my kids during the week, and then I would sacrifice my weekends, missing all the holidays, the barbecues, and I missed a lot. And, as I was growing in my journey, like I've read, Dan Martell's Buy Back Your Time. I started listening to podcasts. Podcasts was something that I never had really embarked on before. And I started listening to Ed Milet, Mel Robbins. So everything started shifting as to where I was putting my attention and my priorities. Like I wasn't binging Netflix anymore. I'm like, I need to start working on myself and my own personal growth journey. And as I was, doing that and getting my health in order and then helping other people get their health in order, that gave me a lot of purpose. That gave me a lot of purpose and passion, knowing that I was helping people. As you can imagine, in the trauma center, like, you lose, unfortunately, a lot of people due to devastating injuries and non-survivable injuries. And so it really gave me, passion and purpose to help. And I was still kind of in that self-employed box, you could say, where, if I didn't show up, nothing was happening. So there really wasn't a system in place. And I was kind of almost in like an entrepreneur type space. I kind of felt like boxed in and wasn't full ownership in that space that I really wanted. But it's really what you do like in your off time and how you choose to spend your time. And that's what I've learned. And I shifted all of my social media to follow people in spaces of like, and who, are in places where I want to be. And so I completely changed my social media and who I follow. So like the algorithms change, and podcasts at my like I said, Mel Robbins. I've listened to Bigger Pockets for like real estate. I listened to, the Rich Summers Report. Like I listened to all of these different podcasts, and literally because of my 1099 work, the way that I do that is I have like an hour drive to my 1099 gig. And I use that as my university. That's how I utilize that time to listen to podcasts and learn. And so, when you do, most of us are type A who are in healthcare. Yep. So you learn to utilize and you try to be as efficient as possible to figure out, okay, what in my calendar is going to allow me to, to really elevate and grow, and you figure that space out. And I'm obsessed with using my 5 to 9 time to grow, expand. And I align with what a lot of people say now, in the sense that there's no greater time to be able to do anything that you want to do, because everything is at your fingertips and it's the easiest time to learn. I mean, I'm not ashamed to say I'm 51 years old, but when I was writing book reports in middle school and high school, I was still going to the library looking up microfilm. Most people don't even know what that is. It's like, I'm like, there's no excuse for not being able to utilize everything that's out there between AI and podcast. And, it's just a great time to be in this space.
Yeah. And sometimes I think that honestly, the amount of information and the ease of access to which we have this information, I think is also the reason why people often feel stuck, because there's just so much information. Everyone's always in that analysis paralysis phase. So it's awesome that you're able to take action. So was multifamily investing, did you dive straight into that? Was there other stepping stones in real estate before this? Could you talk about that journey?
Yeah, absolutely. And so this is really fun for me to talk about, definitely this part of the journey, because when I first read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, it was in my late teens, early 20s. There was a gentleman in my network of people who was buying up all of these properties in Baltimore. And I was like, how is he doing this? So at that age, I was like, hey, can I hang out with you? Can I see what you're doing? Can I just be your helper for free, like, on the inside to kind of see how you do things. And that's really where my interest peaked. And I was reading that, and then I got married young, had my kids young, my whole nursing career, and I just kind of got swept away and never followed through. So fast forward to now, one of my anesthesia classmates, and he's a good friend of mine. He saw me go through like everything that I went through in anesthesia school. He started posting like a couple years ago about like investing in real estate and like apartment buildings and all this. And I called him up and I was like, hey, like, we're good friends. Why haven't you told me about, like what it is that you're doing? And so my husband and I met him for dinner, and it was a 4-hour dinner. And that's where we learned about the structure of multifamily and why it's such a good opportunity. And at the time, we were getting hit with major tax bills because at that point I'm 1099. So there's so many tax benefits, learning about appreciation, learning about cash flow. And my husband and I are not flippers. And so we just decided to go, like, we just didn't want to be passive investors, right? We actually wanted to have ownership. We wanted to do all the legwork. We wanted to go full in and be operators or syndicators or general partners, however, those words get thrown around all the time. And we were like, why didn't we know about this? Like, and it just kind of just blew up in my belly and my heart. And I was like, you know what? I'm like, we need to like spread the word. There's all these other high earning income folks in, healthcare, and we need to get the word out because we're getting hit with close to 40%, in taxes. And not only that, we get to serve investors, but then we get to serve the communities of the properties that we're taking care of. So we're able to give back in two ways. We're able to serve the tenants in the apartment buildings, and then we get to serve investors. And to me, that's like a win-win. And I just felt like everyone needed to know about it. We're not flippers. We did not start out with single family homes, no short-term rentals, condos, Airbnbs. And that's great. Like a lot of people who break into real estate start out like that. So, and I think that's great. That just wasn't in the mix for us at the time. And that's why we decided to go all in.
Yeah. Wow. What a full circle moment. That's awesome that you had this interest in multifamily at a young age, and then, nursing and anesthesia school and all that took over. And then many years later, you end up going back to multifamily. So that's really, really cool. What advice would you give to someone who's looking to get into multifamily? Because I know, it's really hard to become a GP or find a GP. And so, like, what was maybe the value proposition that you brought to that partnership, or what advice would you give to someone who's looking to become a GP but doesn't have all that experience of single family to start with?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is your network. You have to change your ecosystem, and you have to surround yourself with people who are where you want to be. The first bit of advice is that any time that you probably share this with family or friends, they're going to tell you that you're crazy. So, and it's because they haven't been where you want to go. So you have to align yourself with like-minded people who are where you want to be. And for me, that network started with my friend who I went to anesthesia school with, who they currently have $274 million in assets under management. And I told him during that dinner, I'm like, hey, you're going to show us how to do this. So he ended up mentoring us, but make no mistake, there's a lot of work involved. We spent every Saturday morning for 3 hours for 9 months learning how to underwrite multifamily properties. So while everyone was out partying on the weekends, we're not big partiers, but doing all their things on the weekends, we literally spent 3 hours every single Saturday, and it didn't matter where we were or if we had to travel somewhere. Those 3 hours were dedicated to that. So I think most people think the barrier to entry to real estate is this huge barrier. And it's not. There's so much information. There's always like 2 or 3 books that I recommend to anyone who's looking to get into real estate, and I'm like, you have to start reading, you have to start surrounding yourself, you have to start networking, you have to build your network around you, and you have to get into a like-minded space, hence the reason how you and I met. So that's where it all starts. So, that is my ultimate recommendation for anybody. And multifamily real estate is not a get rich quick nothing. It is the long game. And so, I'm 51, my husband's 53, and I always tell people, they're like, don't you want to like hang out on a beach somewhere? I'm like, yeah, but I can still do all these things. Like I can still hang out on a beach and still do real estate and invest and do all these things. But it's really just alignment, and it's making the decision that you want to learn more and you want to grow more, because entrepreneurship and learning something new is going to expand you in ways that you've never, could have expected or dreamed about.
Yeah, well, I think it's really badass, everything you're doing. I mean, most people say it's always too late to do X, right? And so you obviously started CRNA school at 38, been a nurse at CRNA for 12 years now. Now you're getting into multifamily. It's like it's never too late to do anything. You can just always have to change your identity now. So what did that first deal actually look like that you guys have or had got at that time?
Yeah. So we have ownership right now in, in 74 million, and those two deals, we were limited partners on that deal. And that's another thing that I tell people, is that when you step into multifamily real estate, one of the quickest ways to learn the business is to be a limited partner, meaning you're a passive investor. But that's how you learn. I mean, there are some people who just say, hey, like, take my money basically and invest it, and I don't really care about the back end of things, which is fine. That's what passive and limited partnership is. And then like our current project, when we were awarded this deal, it really validates like everything that you've done to get to this point, because there are properties out there that are coming to us at a discount right now, but not every single deal pencils. So you are underwriting sometimes hundreds of deals before you actually get one that makes sense. And you have to also remember, like, you have to be a good steward of other people's money, because they're trusting you to invest. And it carries a big responsibility. And investors are always first, no matter what. Our investors are number one every single time. But to have it all come together in an environment where other people are growing and doing this and actually doing the thing, and you get awarded a deal and a property, it's like a full circle moment. So, compared to others in the multifamily space, I would say early on in our journey, but Priority One Capital was born in January of 2024. That meeting that we had with my friend was December of 23, and here we are, May of 2026, and it's been a lot of hard work and a lot of learning and a lot of expanding and growing, and it's not easy, but having that full circle and getting that first, it's really amazing.
Yeah, that's awesome. Starting as limited partner is definitely a great way to get into whatever you want to get into, whether it's be multifamily, apartments, or hotels or storage or anything like that. So you get into LP first, and then how many deals are you involved in now as a GP?
This is actually the one that we were just awarded is our very first GP. So the two previous were our like limited partner deals.
Okay, and can you talk about this GP deal that you're in on? How many units is it? What was the purchase price? All that different stuff.
Yeah, so this is really exciting because it's the third property in Georgia, and the suburbs of Georgia they're growing. We always look at the market, population growth, job growth, where are people moving, what investments are currently there infrastructure wise, what big giant names are investing in the area. And this is a 75 unit property where the previous owner, he left, as what we say this all the time in real estate, it's called leaving a lot of meat on the bone. And so he didn't do a ton of lift as far as exterior or interior renovations. They did some, but not a lot. But what's exciting is that it's we bought it for under replacement cost. We bought it at $103,000 per door, and the current market recent comps for similar apartments recently sold for like 141 per door. So we get it on replacement cost. We buy it for much less than everybody else. The rents are way under market, and we have a whole value add strategy that we're doing to improve, the tenants' lives there, to improve the property. We have other, co-GPs involved in this as well. So we are like so excited to implement our business plan, and we bought it for 7.7. So yeah, million.
Yeah,
Sorry.
yeah, yeah. That's awesome. So you bought it for 7.4, 7.5 million. Things are selling for 140 a door. So maybe let's say 10 point something million, right? And so you already bought it at a huge discount, walking into about $3 million in equity from day one.
Yeah, and then, with the appreciation that you get from improving, we implement our business plan first. Obviously, that's going to take a little bit of time. And then as you slowly are implementing your business plan as far as exterior and interior renovations, you're able to capture, premiums for improving the units, doing some upgrades. And as you capture those premiums, you're able to increase the rents. And a lot of people think that people just assign rent, and it's not. It's driven by the market, right? So you can't just randomly assign, a rent premium with no basis for how you're doing it. So, right now, that premium is going to bring us probably an extra 175, per door that we are renovating. And so, when you buy multifamily, you're buying a business, and any business, and, is based on the value of a business is based on the income it generates. And so when we go in here, we look at, everything income wise from the property, expense wise from the property. We minimize expenses. We find ways to increase our net operating income. And then we usually hold these properties for 5 years. And so on exit, you're able to capture all of that value and give it to your investors.
Yeah. And then what kind of financing did you guys get on this, and what were the terms?
Yeah, so we don't do bridge debt, so we do fixed rate debt. This is agency debt, so and it's 6.25%. So we're looking at annual returns of 20%, which is way more than the stock market will give you on any given day. So
Nice. And then how'd you guys end up on Georgia?
So back to the market. So the very first property that we became LPs in is a 268 unit property in Stone Mountain. And when you are looking at in the United States, there's certain areas that you tend to focus on. And obviously, we were aligned with our strategic partners and our business partners. So we were also learning and underwriting like how to evaluate markets. We use something called CoStar, which basically is a huge database across the United States that holds all the information about every single commercial property that there is. And so they are the holder of basically all of the data for those commercial properties. And then, it's so basic for market. Like there's certain pockets, you just have to look at job growth, where people are moving to. Like one way, we look at U-Haul, we look at the major moving companies to see where people are moving. And we're looking at, job growth, like I said, population growth. And that's really how we evaluate the markets. And then when you're buying these commercial properties under replacement cost, a lot of people were buying properties in 2020 and 2021 with bridge debt, and because the economy did what it did, no one expected interest rates to go almost to like 9%, right? So a lot of these loans are coming due on these properties, which is why we're able to buy them at such a discount, because most people are holding them for 5 to 7 years, and we're able to capture these discounts because a lot of some people just they could have been an amazing operator, but they just got stuck and did bridge debt. And so now, it would have been hard for them to refinance, and loans are coming due. So, so we buy fixed rate debt, and the property has to cash flow from day one, and and your leverage has to be really, really good when you're talking about financing. But for the market, it's the suburbs of Atlanta are just booming, Sunbelt region. So.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, it's great that you do all this due diligence to make sure that you're buying in the right market, that there's still job growth, all these economic macro factors that are showing growth in the market as well, and just doing everything you can to protect other people's money. That's so good. Yeah. So I want to go back to just like the high income earners and healthcare workers specifically. Why do you think that so many of healthcare workers, doctors, CRNAs, PAs, NPs, struggle to build lasting wealth even though they're making such good income?
Well, I think well, first of all, it's because, they don't have a tax strategy. They don't, I think a lot of us have been groomed to think, you earn more and more income in order to support the life that you want. But really, the tax code benefits people who provide housing and who start businesses. And so, if you invest, and I think we've all been taught to, invest, put everything in your 401k. So whether you're making money or not making money, the people who are managing your money are making money no matter what, whether you're losing it or gaining it. And so I think we all buy into that. Like that's kind of how, we were raised, like go to work, fund your 401ks, max them out, and then what? Because you can't utilize any of that money until you're 65 and you retire. So then what? Like what are you doing to create passive income? And I think a lot of people don't realize, high income earners, you're working hard, you're sacrificing your time. And I think people also get caught in lifestyle creep. They don't realize, like, I tell newer CRNAs, like when I was mentoring, student residents in anesthesia for, our nurses, I'm like, look, like it's going to be really tempting when you leave school and you graduate to like go buy that car or go buy that big house. And I'm like, just like save your money, pay off some bills, live small for a little bit more time, and really learn about, investing. But at that point, when I was mentoring, SRNAs, I wasn't building wealth at that time through real estate. And I think people just get bought in that they don't have passive income. And when people hit scenarios in their life, like maybe I did, like unexpected divorce or something, terrible happens, they don't have another source of income. They don't have passive income flowing in. And I also think that a lot of people just don't know that, you can use old 401ks to invest in real estate. So you may not have a lot of, liquid money hanging around or liquidity, but you have old self-directed or old 401ks that you can use to invest in real estate. I mean, there literally right now is $2.1 trillion sitting in old 401ks that people don't know that they can utilize for investing in real estate. And I'm like, this is another reason why I need to get the word out, because the goal is that, when people, talk about wealth, it's not just like money, 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 money. It's having time and not looking back. I mean, we're in healthcare. How many people have we seen pass away? How many people have we been in, at the bedside in their last moments, and they regret a lot of things because they would have done them differently. But it's really about creating that time freedom and that ability, like I had to say when my daughter got hurt on the playground, that I wasn't worried about my pay time off and my PTO and all these other things. And so I think that's where the handcuffs are. I don't think that people really realize what their options are, and then they get hit with these huge tax bills and they don't have a way to leverage. And we're not taught to build our our plan and our strategy around like tax strategy and how can we optimize everything that we can.
Hmm. Yeah, that's all so good. So many golden nuggets for sure. How has your identity shifted? Like when you introduce yourself to people now, do you still say you're a nurse first, or do you say you're a real estate investor? I know I struggle with that sometimes because I'm doing a little bit of both worlds, right? And so I'm curious how that has changed for you.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the identity shift is important, and you have to learn to, be a thought leader in your space. I think imposter syndrome, people throw that word around a lot, but I just think that, one of the ways that you can kind of get over some of that is just talking about what it is that you're learning and what it is that you're doing, and people say, "Oh, what do you do?" And I'm like, "Well, we're real estate investors." And they're like, "Oh, okay." And you have to introduce yourself that way. And I'm like, "And, I've been a nurse for 32 years, and I've done anesthesia for, you know, uh 12 years now, and and that's what we are. We're real estate investors. We're building a real estate firm to help other people, and at some point, I won't be delivering anesthesia at some point. Not because I don't want to, and not because I don't love it, but because I think that we're building something great here, and we're building a service and something that adds value to people, and uh, you know, it's kind of like the natural transition eventually, but you just have to you got to believe it, in here, and then you just have to say, hey, like, I'm a real estate investor, and you just got to introduce yourself that way.
At what point are you going to quit anesthesia and go full time into real estate?
Yeah.
If there is that, do you want to?
I want it to be on my terms, because I will fully tell you, like, I adore my patients, and in the space that I am in now, like, as far as doing anesthesia, like, I really enjoy. I've always enjoyed taking care of people, and I enjoy the physiology of all that I do. It's very brain stimulating, but I think the transition will come in the moment, in the right moment.
Yeah.
So the goal is to have the pendulum swing the other way. And this is what I tell people all the time. But I think there is a mindset out there that sometimes, like, I'm not saying, hey, everyone go quit your 9 to 5 right now. But I've had my back up against the wall enough times in my life to know that, you know, um, that no matter what, you're going to find a way to make it happen. And because nursing has always been my passion, um, that will eventually fizzle out over time, but it will be on my terms when I want it to. And it's not going to take away from what I'm doing and building in real estate. And, I have an amazing network of CRNAs and healthcare professionals that I adore and, love to stay in touch with. So it'll be sometime in the future, but I don't have a set date yet.
Yeah, yeah, that's kind of how I feel. I mean, I go back and forth. Some days I absolutely hate my job. Other times I love it. But for the most part, I think it's great because, it pays for everything that we're doing outside the hospital, right? And also we have an amazing network that we're tapped into that we're also trying to help, whether that increasing their financial status or just changing their mindset so that they're not doing this forever too.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. And I think that there will come a point where a decision will need to be made, right? Like, you get to a point where you're so busy building what you're building, and then you have to weigh that, against, it's all of that, buy back your time. Like, that time that you're utilizing has to move the needle forward, right? So, and there's always going to be a phase of this sucks. Like, people are like, I don't know how you do it. And I'm like, well, I get up at 4:30 in the morning. I leave by 5:30. I do anesthesia. I have an hour ride there, an hour ride back. And some people are like, well, why don't you go somewhere closer? And I'm like, well, I'm going where the work is and where I know the work is consistent. And so, but that hour time to and from allows me to listen to podcasts and educate myself or make phone calls or do all these things. And I utilize my time the best that I possibly can right now. But whenever you're building something, you have to embrace the suck, because it's going to suck. You're going to be pulled in like 50 million different directions. And, it's not easy. And that's the part that people don't see, like, on the back end.
Totally. Yeah. What's the best book or resource that just changed how you think about money?
The Miracle Equation is one. That's a really good one. And Robert Kiyosaki's Cash Flow Quadrant, and honestly, anything that Tony Robbins puts out is amazing as well.
That's so good. And then if you can go back and give yourself one piece of advice, or to anyone who's involved in healthcare and is looking to make the jump into real estate or business, what's your biggest piece of advice?
I would say just go for it. Just take action and start learning. Like, you're never too old to learn something new. And if you take that route, you're probably, of the 1% that is actually doing it. Just do it. Just start. I think a lot of, and in healthcare, I will say this too. I always tell people, look, we are trained to have to know everything before we start. And that's where the big mindset shift has to change. You have to know that if you want to build something outside of healthcare, you aren't going to know all the things. It's just impossible. And that's where that whole analysis paralysis comes in. And that's really the bottleneck becomes you as the person, is that that's a complete mindset shift from, you know, having to know everything and then having plan A, B, C, D, E, and F. And then, you know, but that's what holds a lot of people back from starting a new journey, no matter what it is. And I'm like, just go for it. That's what we did. We went for it. We learned. We were open-minded. We're like, okay, we're not going to know everything. And every time I would feel myself get stuck in that cycle, because there were a lot of those cycles for me, it was really hard to break out of that mentality. And it was a total mindset shift that I really had to get over, and just be like, all right, like, what's the worst thing that can happen? The worst thing that can happen is I'm still doing anesthesia. I still get to do anesthesia because I have a lot of gratitude. My body's still working, my brain's still working, and I can do that and still take care of patients. But you just have to, like, just get over it. Just go for it. Like, we only live once, and we have a short time here on this earth. And so, you know, you just have to go for it.
Mic drop. I love it. Love it. Leah, I'm so inspired by you. I love everything that you're doing. It's awesome that you're spreading so much knowledge and helping other healthcare professionals. I love it. I really resonate with everything that you're doing. If people want to get a hold of you, learn about Priority One Capital, what's the best place for them to do so?
All right. So the best place is you can find me on all social under my name. So Leah Krebs, just, you can search me on Instagram. You can search me on Facebook. And then our website is p1capitalinvestment.com. You can find Priority One Capital there. And then, you know, you can reach out to me. You can, you know, anytime.
Awesome. Well, Leah, I appreciate you taking the time to come onto the show. Everyone, I appreciate you staying until the very end. If you found any value from today's show, please give a like, thumbs up, share it with someone who's in healthcare, share it with someone who's in business. I appreciate you guys. And as always, I'm Lorenzo. This is Leah. This has been The Lowdown. See you guys in the next one. Peace.
Peace.